Good morning. Welcome to today's chapel service. Today we welcome back Ryan Modahl, who's been exploring the relationship between theater and worship as a part of his senior seminar project. Today he starts a new series of 3 chapels in which we'll be using the death of a salesman as a means to explore ritual worship and how theater interacts with faith. We thank you today to Lewis Johnson and Laura Mall for their performances. Thank you to Alpha Psi Omega for their leadership and hospitality. So please stand for the greeting. Arise, shine, for your light has come.
And the glory of the Lord has risen upon you.
You may be seated.
Willie?
It's all right. I came back.
Why? What happened? Did something happen, Willie?
Nothing happened.
You didn't smash the car, did you?
I said nothing happened. Didn't you hear me?
Don't you feel well?
I'm tired to death. I couldn't make it. I just couldn't make it, Linda.
Where were you all day? You look terrible.
I got as far as a little above Yonkers. I stopped for a cup of coffee. Maybe it was coffee.
What?
I suddenly couldn't drive anymore. The car kept going off on the shoulder, you know?
Oh. Maybe it was the steering again. I don't think Angelo knows the Studebaker.
No. It's me. It's me. Suddenly I'm realizing I'm going 60 miles an hour, and I don't remember the last 5 minutes. I can't seem to keep my mind to it.
Maybe it's your glasses. You never went for new glasses.
No, I see everything. I came back 10 miles an hour. Took me nearly 4 hours from Yonkers.
Well, you'll just have to take a rest, Willie. You can't continue this way.
I just got back from Florida.
But you didn't rest your mind. Your mind is overactive, and the mind is what counts, dear.
I'll start out in the morning. Maybe I'll feel better in the morning. These arch supports are killing me.
Take an aspirin. Should I get you an aspirin? It'll soothe you.
I was driving along, you understand? And I was fine. I was observing the scenery. You can imagine me looking on the scenery, on the trees so thick, the sun so warm. I opened the windshield and just let the air bathe over me. And then all of a sudden, I'm going off the road. I tell you, I absolutely forgot I was driving. And then I'd gone off on the other side of the white line. I could have killed somebody. So I went on again. And 5 minutes later, I'm dreaming again, and I have such thoughts. Such strange thoughts.
Willie, dear, talk to them again. There's no reason you can't work in New York.
They don't need me in New York. I'm the New England man. I'm vital in New England.
But you're 60 years old. They can't expect you to keep traveling every week.
I'll have to send a wire to Portland. I'm supposed to see Brown and Morrison tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock to show the line. I could sell them.
Why don't you go down to the place tomorrow and tell Howard you've simply got to work in New York? You're too accommodating, dear.
If old man Wagner was alive, I'd still be in charge of New York. That man was a prince. He was a masterful man. But that boy of his, that Howard, he don't appreciate. When I went north for the first time, that Wagner company didn't know what New England was.
Why don't you tell those things to Howard, dear?
I will. I definitely will. Is there any cheese?
I'll make you a sandwich.
No, go to sleep. I'll take some milk. I'll be up right away. The boys in?
They're sleeping. Happy took Biff on a date tonight.
That's so.
It was so nice to see them shaving together, one behind the other, in the bathroom, and going out together. You notice? The whole house smells of shaving lotion.
Figure it out. Work a lifetime to pay off a house, you finally own it, and there's no one to live in it.
Well, dear, life is a casting off. That's always been the way.
No. Some people accomplish something. Did Biff say anything after I left this morning?
You shouldn't have criticized him, Willie, especially after he just got off the train. You mustn't lose your temper with him.
When did I lose my temper? I simply asked him if he'd be making any money. Is that criticism?
But dear, how could he make any money?
There's such an undercurrent in him. He became a moody man. Did he apologize when I left this morning?
He was crestfallen, Willie. You know how he admires you. I think if he finds himself, then you'll both be happier and not fight anymore.
How can he find himself on a farm? Is that a life? A farmhand? In the beginning, when he was young, I thought, a young man, it's good for him to tramp around, take a lot of different jobs. But it's more than 10 years now, and he has yet to make $35 a week.
He's finding himself, Willie.
Not finding yourself at an age of 34 is a disgrace.
Shh.
The trouble is he's lazy.
Willie, please.
Biff is a lazy bum.
They're sleeping. Get something to eat. Go on down.
Why did he come home? I would like to know what brought him home.
I don't know. I think he's still lost, Willie. I think he's very lost.
Biff Loman is lost. In this greatest country in the world, a young man with such personal attractiveness gets lost. And such a hard worker. There's one thing about Biff. He's not lazy.
Never.
I'll see him in the morning. I'll have a nice talk with him. I'll get him a job selling. He could be big in no time, my God. Remember how they used to follow him up and down the halls in high school? When he smiled at them, his faces lit up. When he walked down the street.
Willie, dear, I got a new kind of American-type cheese today. It's whipped.
Why'd you get American when I like Swiss?
I just thought you'd like a change.
I don't want a change. I want Swiss cheese. Why am I always being contradicted?
I thought it would be a surprise.
Why don't you open the window in here?
They're all open, dear.
The way they box us in here. Bricks and windows, windows and bricks.
We should have bought the land next door.
The street is lined with cars. There's not a breath of fresh air in the neighborhood. The grass don't grow anymore, and you can't raise a carrot in the backyard. They should have had a law against apartment houses. Remember those two beautiful elm trees out there? When I and Biff hung the swing between them?
Yeah, like being a million miles away from the city.
They should have arrested that builder for cutting those down. They massacred the neighborhood. More and more I think of those days, Linda. The time of year it was lilac and wisteria, and the peonies would come out, and the daffodils. What fragrance in the room.
Well, after all, people had to move somewhere.
No, there's more people now.
I don't think there's more people. I think...
There's more people. That's what's ruining this country. Population is getting out of control. The competition is maddening. Smell the stink from that apartment house. The other one on that other side? How can they whip cheese?
Go down, try it, and be quiet.
You're not worried about me, are you, sweetheart?
You've got too much on the ball to worry about.
You're my foundation and my support, Linda.
Just try to relax, dear. You make mountains out of molehills.
I won't fight with him anymore. If he wants to go back to Texas, let him go.
He'll find his way.
Sure. Certain men just don't get started till later in life, like Thomas Edison, I think, or B.F. Goodrich. One of them was deaf. I'll put my money on Biff.
And Willie, if it's warm Sunday, we'll drive in the country, and we'll open the windshield and take lunch.
Nah, the windshields don't open on the new cars.
But you opened it today.
Me? I didn't. How isn't that peculiar? Isn't that remarkable?
What, darling?
It's the most remarkable thing.
What, dear?
I was thinking of the Chevy. 1928. When I had that red Chevy. That funny. Could have sworn I was driving that Chevy today.
Well, that's nothing. Something must have reminded you.
Remarkable. Tease. Remember those days? The way Biff used to summonize that car? The dealer refused to believe that it had 8,000 miles on it. Close your eyes. I'll be right up.
Good morning. Now, as we just finished the celebration of Christmas in the Christian faith, many Christian churches come and have these pageants. Usually it's stories of Jesus' birth, and despite the fact that a lot of them have the Magi in them, even though that's not until Epiphany, a lot of congregations sometimes have some issues with these. And they claim that having these sorts of performances in a place of worship makes them cutesy and warm and fuzzy. So I'd like to share a story about an experience that I personally had growing up. We arranged a pageant like this, and I was chosen to be St. Nicholas. It was a pageant explaining the difference between Santa Claus and St. Nick. And kind of throughout my life, it's been the running joke in my congregation that I'd be a priest. So they try and find any opportunity to put me in vestments. I also got to play the role of Jesus in the living stations. And doing these, I got a lot out of them as far as perspective and putting myself in the place of these biblical or worldly characters. And Aristotle also says a fair amount about ritual, which is what I'm here to talk about today. In his work, The Poetics, he talks about Greek tragedy and comedy and applies them to civic rituals. And also in Ethics and Politics, he could be talking about the consideration of rituals as far as how they are concerned with the interactions of citizens. And they are at least treated only to the extent that they are strictly civic rituals. But I think by applying both ritual within a religious atmosphere and within theater, we do kind of see an overlap, and we do get a lot out of it. And for those who are against showing pageants, I think we should remember that the whole tradition of erecting nativity scenes dates back all the way to St. Francis of Assisi. He was not trying to create hallmark moments, but he tried to assist Christians in better entering into the meditation on the meaning of Christmas. St. Francis used real people and excuse me. He used real people and animals in these scenes. And we should not forget that God chose to enter human history as a baby, and that the redemption of the world began with a birth announcement. However, who here feels bogged down and worn out throughout our daily rituals? Getting up in the morning, we get ready for the day, maybe say some prayers, and we make our entire day just the same routine because we have to get stuff done. This is kind of a danger of ritual. We end up becoming just autonomous, and we don't really think about what is going on. We try to do the best we can. We try and stay engaged, and we realize that there are reasons why we need to have structure, but sometimes we just try and find our place and fall into our slot. And I think as far as a religious worship setting, 3 dangers that fall into ritual, or at least our understanding of ritual, are judgmentalism, isolation, and passivity. And I think these are shown very well in the character of Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman. So judgmentalism. When we attend church services and see that others are not acting according to our expectations, there is a danger that we can judge them unfairly. For example, if the parish decides to host a Christmas pageant, there is a temptation to dismiss it as cutesy and warm and fuzzy. That in turn can blind us to the century-old precedents that were not created merely out of sentiment, but for serious religious purposes. And I think as far as judgmentalism in the worldly sense, I think we see Willie in how he judges his son for not living up to his expectations, for not living up to what he wants for his son. I mean, he mentions, he wants to be a farmhand. What kind of life is that? He's 34 years old and he doesn't know who he is. That's a disgrace. And I think we fall into holding up other people to what we expect them to be within ritual. The second danger is isolation. Then there's a problem of assuming that in any interaction among congregants during any church service, it is to be frowned upon, and assumed instead that we should not acknowledge each other at all during public worship. Taken to an extreme, this creates a bunch of individuals who happen to be in the same building at the same time, rather than a community worshiping God together as one body in Christ. In fact, it is a common motif to complaints about the liturgy that there is altogether too much congregational involvement in the liturgy, which brings us to the next danger of passivity. But I'd like to go back to isolation. Willie Loman feels isolated. Throughout his day, all he does is he gets up early in the morning, drives to work, works, and goes back home, and he's exhausted. He feels that it's just him and that all of his duties fall on his shoulders. And I think all too often in our Christian faith, we like to think of our relationship with God as one that is personal and internal, and that it is our choice and that we reach out to God, when we have to remember that not only is God reaching to us, but he's calling us to reach out to those around us. So we are not just islands living out our own faith, but that by us living out our faith, we interact with all those around us. But if we don't do that, we do fall into passivity, the third danger of ritual. In reaction to what can sometimes be an overemphasis on communal participation, some Christians claim that active participation has been misunderstood. Rather than considering active participation to mean laity involved in speaking or singing the prayers of the liturgy in union with the priest or pastor, we are told that active participation instead means to be silent and unite ourselves with the liturgy in our hearts. Sometimes this admonition is glazed with pious assurances that is how the Virgin Mary prayed at the foot of the cross. Now, while there's certainly nothing wrong with praying silently, there is much to commend interior offerings of oneself in union with Christ on the cross. The fact is that the church provides for the laity to do more than just pray silently. We are called to share our gifts, things that we can bring to the table, and we all have those gifts whether we believe it or not. And this is yet another facet of Christian life that is not either or, but both and. We can pray silently and give the congregational responses the church asks us to give. We can offer ourselves in union with Christ on the cross and serve at Mass as a lector or extraordinary minister of Holy Communion. So I think we also see this passivity expressed in Willie when he doesn't feel that he can approach his bosses to find out if there is work that's closer to where he lives. And I think all too often we end up being passive and just accept the burden that is our own life. We don't reach out to those that could maybe help us. We just take up our cross, but not in a holy way, in a begrudging way. And I think Pope Francis is doing a great job of calling not only Catholics, but all Christians to really look on our faith and how we practice it. Are we just going through the motions? Are we just falling in line where we should be? Or are we questioning why we are doing things and going out and reaching the people? And last year at World Youth Day, he approached some youth, and this is what he had to say. I want to tell you something. What is it that I expect as a consequence of World Youth Day? I want a mess. We know that in Rio de Janeiro, there would be greater disorder, but I want trouble in the diocese. I want to see the church get closer to the people. I want to get rid of clericalism, the mundane, this closing ourselves off within ourselves, in our parishes, schools, or structures, because these need to get out. I think he's really calling us to not only work within our own systems, but to get out and really shake things up. That we are not just, as Christians, we are not just a form of religion, but a way of life. And we must remember that rituals are not made by, they are made by people. People are not made by the rituals. Thank you. If you'll all join me in the prayers of the community. Guard us from the harm of judgmentalism when others do not meet our expectations within our ritual practices. Instead, allow us to see your creation, and may we be overwhelmed with joy. Lord, in your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
Remind us that we are not alone in our longing. We are not islands. Our relationship with you is not only a personal one, but one that we share with a community of love. Lord, in your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
Keep us forever watchful and active in the mystery that is you. May we not sit back and become a passive body. Remind us of the passivity we are not called to be. We are invited to be active in the celebration of your forgiveness. Lord, in your mercy.
Hear our prayer.
Now let us pray together the prayer our Savior taught us. Our Father,
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever.
Please stand for the blessing. God who creates light, God who is light, God who reveals light, bless you now and forever.
Amen.
Go in peace, serve the poor.